A white envelope, seemingly harmless, suddenly became a bombshell shaking the very heart of Kensington Palace. Kate Middleton, the woman renowned for her composure, balance, and remarkable ability to control her emotions, for the very first time lost her steadiness. Inside the envelope lay the results of a day test, a thin piece of paper, yet one that carried the final secret of Princess Diana, the mother-in-law Kate never had the chance to meet, but to whom she had always felt an uncanny bond. What could be in this result that brought Kate to tears? Why would a woman so resilient, so accustomed to the relentless pressure of both the media and the monarchy, suddenly find herself on the verge of panic? What was this secret? Did it relate to the true identity of a royal family member? Or was it proof of suspicions that had been buried for decades? These questions not only tore at Kate's soul, but also carried the potential to shake the very foundations of the British monarchy. For in a system built entirely upon bloodlines and legitimacy, one single document suggesting a break in lineage would be enough to dismantle order, even to threaten the stability of the throne itself. Kate understood with chilling clarity that this truth was not simply about one individual's fate. It could determine the future of the entire kingdom. And the tragedy of it all was this: she, and she alone, held the key to unlocking that darkened door. Would she choose silence to protect her family, or dare to reveal it, plunging everyone into a storm of global media frenzy and merciless public judgment? If you don't want to miss the shocking revelations that lie ahead, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We will continue to walk with you as we pull back the curtain on the final secret Diana left behind, a truth powerful enough to change everything. That afternoon, when the golden light of dusk streamed through the tall windows of Kensington Palace, casting a serene glow over Kate's study. Yet in that very moment, the peace was shattered by a single white envelope placed neatly upon her desk. No sender's name, no trace of origin, only a hurried scrawl of handwriting across the front, paired with a deep crimson seal, one completely unfamiliar to Kate, unlike anything she had ever seen on official royal documents. A wave of unease immediately flooded her mind. Kate stared at the envelope. Doubt, anxiety, and a creeping, nameless fear began to envelop her. Who had sent it? Why directly to her, bypassing the heavily controlled security channels of the palace? And most crucially, what secret inside required such absolute secrecy? Her hands trembled as they brushed against the paper. She hesitated, even considered setting it aside and reporting it straight to palace security. But then, a powerful instinct urged her to open it at once. As though, deep within, she already knew that what lay inside was tied to something momentous, something that could alter her destiny and that of her family. With one swift cut of the letter opener, the seal was torn. Kate held her breath. Inside was a neatly bound document, its cover page stamped with bold black words, "Confidential Nay Report." Her heart seized. This was no prank, no meaningless scrap of gossip. It was scientific, precise, undeniable. Kate turned the first page. Cold, clinical lines of text and data filled her vision: charts, reference codes, and recorded results. But it was the subheading that froze her blood: the name of Diana Spencer, the late Princess of Wales, the mother-in-law she had always admired yet mourned. And beside it, another name. A name completely unknown to Kate, absent from every official royal record she had ever encountered. In that instant, the air in the room seemed to turn to ice. The world tilted around her. Her eyes locked on the words, her fingers numb and trembling so violently she could hardly grip the pages. And then, tears welled and rolled freely down her cheeks. Kate, the woman so often praised for her composure before the public eye, the woman who had endured relentless crises and scrutiny, was now powerless to hold back her emotions. No one yet knew what this unfamiliar name truly meant, but for Kate, it pointed to a terrifying possibility. Could this be evidence of a hidden relationship? A truth about Princess Diana that had never been revealed? Could this name be the key to rewriting the entire history of royal bloodlines? And most disturbingly, why had this explosive result been sent to her and not to anyone else in the royal family? The truth revealed on those pages shattered the fragile peace Kate had fought so hard to preserve. Her heart ached not only for herself, but for William, for their children, and for the legacy of Diana, the woman the world revered, yet who so often suffered tragedy. As Kate's eyes moved across the cold, clinical lines of the DNA report, the horrific truth became clear. Numbers, codes, sterile annotations, all of it carried the weight of 1,000 knives piercing her heart. The report confirmed what no one in the royal family had ever dared to admit. There existed a child of Princess Diana's blood, but one who bore no Windsor name. One absent from the royal lineage the world had always believed to be absolute and untarnished. This was not just a medical result. It was living proof of a secret that, if exposed, could bring down the very walls of majesty surrounding the monarchy. Kate sat frozen. In her mind echoed whispers she had once overheard long ago, stories dismissed as malicious gossip, rumors brushed aside with icy smiles or sharp denials. Some had claimed Diana harbored a secret love, that she longed for freedom beyond the suffocating grip of the palace. Others had even hinted that such a love had led to a child, hidden away to protect the family's honor. Kate had always believed such talk to be fabricated tales, designed to tarnish Diana's image, the woman who was too radiant, too adored, and therefore a thorn in the side of power. But now, the DNA report in her hands had transformed those baseless whispers into undeniable truth. That unfamiliar name written in the report was proof that Diana had left behind a hidden bloodline, a missing piece that had never been acknowledged in royal history. Kate's entire body trembled. She knew that the existence of a child outside the royal name, yet sharing Diana's blood would ignite a firestorm that could never be contained. What terrified Kate most was not only the truth itself, but its devastating power in the present moment. The British monarchy had long been crafted as a flawless symbol of tradition, honor, and unbroken bloodlines. But if this secret came to light, the public would no longer look upon the Windsors with reverence, but with suspicion, even betrayal. A hidden child meant the monarchy had deceived its people for decades. It also meant that Diana, celebrated worldwide as the embodiment of purity and compassion, would now be shadowed by a forbidden love and an unacknowledged child. Kate understood she now stood at the very center of the storm. As William's wife, as the mother of future kings and princesses, she could not distance herself from the fallout. For once the truth emerged. Public scrutiny would not stop at Diana's past. It would pierce into Kate's present and her children's future. People would ask, were Kate's children still worthy of the throne if the royal bloodline had already been manipulated, hidden, or broken? Could William, the future king, still be seen as legitimate when the ghost of a lost heir loomed so close to the House of Windsor? The fear pressed down on Kate's chest until she could barely breathe. More than anyone, she understood this truth was not an abstract threat. It was a double-edged blade capable of severing the bond between monarchy and people. If exploited, it could become the weapon that destroyed the perfect image the Windsors had spent centuries building. The room fell into suffocating silence. Kate felt as though she herself had been dragged into a ruthless game of power, one in which a single misstep could reduce everything she and William had to ashes. In her trembling hands, the DNA report seemed alive, as though whispering that the hour of truth had finally arrived. And then, in that chilling instant, one thought struck her like ice. If this truth were exposed, it would not only alter Diana's legacy, but could dismantle the very structure of the British monarchy itself. The House of Windsor, long held as a pillar of endurance, might tremble to its core, all because of a secret buried too long. The question haunted Kate without mercy. What should she do with this fateful piece of paper? Remain silent to preserve stability, or face it head-on and risk unleashing a storm that could sweep everything away. Above all, what pierced Kate's heart most was the painful admission she could no longer deny. The perfect image of the royal family was nothing more than a fragile mask. Behind the glittering facade, there might exist shadows so dark that even those within had never dared to imagine them. Kate sat frozen, her eyes locked on the DNA report as though it were burning in her hands. In the midst of her shock, memories surged back, dragging her into moments that once seemed ordinary, but now carried an entirely new weight. She recalled conversations with King Charles, brief, guarded exchanges in which every word, every glance, suddenly appeared suspect. She remembered clearly how, once, when Diana's name was mentioned during a family gathering, Charles's eyes flickered with unease. He quickly changed the subject, cutting off any discussion of his first wife. At the time, Kate thought his avoidance was born of grief that had never healed. But now, with the DNA report in her hands, those glances no longer seemed like sorrow. They bore the shape of anxiety, perhaps even fear. More than once, Charles had addressed Kate in a strange tone, at once affectionate and quietly controlling. He praised her composure, her ability to maintain the family's image before the public. Back then, she took it as encouragement, recognition of her role. But now she began to wonder, had it all been a way to keep her firmly within his grasp, ensuring she never strayed too close to truths better left buried? Doubt swelled within Kate's mind like a gathering storm. If Charles had known for years about the existence of a hidden bloodline, he would have done everything in his power to suppress it. And within that picture, Kate began to see herself as nothing more than a pawn. A carefully polished public face used to preserve the illusion of a flawless monarchy. The sense of betrayal cut deep, not only because of the terrible secret itself, but because it forced her to face the possibility that Charles, the man who should have protected his family, might have been the very first to manipulate the truth. The tensions that had long simmered between Kate and Charles over royal duties now appeared in a new light. She recalled their clashes about media appearances, about how to raise the children, about balancing family life with public duty. Once, she had dismissed it as generational difference, the rigidity of a king bound by ancient traditions. But now she could not ignore the question. Had those conflicts simply been a cover, while his true motive was to guard a secret too dangerous to expose? Every detail of Charles's behavior now seemed like a piece of a darker puzzle. His avoidance whenever Diana was mentioned, his subtle attempts to control Kate's public image, even his sudden tension whenever the press resurfaced old scandals. To Kate, they all pointed to one conclusion. Charles knew far more than he had ever admitted. A crushing sense of deception filled Kate's heart. She began to question whether everything she had worked so hard to build for her family, the peace, the public's respect, the hope for a future for William and their children, was nothing more than a fragile shell, forever at risk of shattering under the weight of a secret buried a generation ago. Outside, the last light of sunset faded and darkness enveloped the room. But the shadows inside Kate's mind were even heavier. She knew from this moment on, every conversation with Charles would be irrevocably changed. Trust had fractured, and in its place lingered a single, agonizing question echoing through her soul. Was Charles the one who had hidden this truth all along? In the days that followed, Kate could not shake from her mind the hazy memories of Diana, especially through the pages of diaries and letters once displayed at Althorp. When she was still a young duchess newly stepping into the royal family, Kate had visited Diana's resting place and caught a glimpse of those personal documents. At the time, they stirred only sympathy and admiration for a woman swept into the vortex of royal life. But now, they had transformed into crucial pieces of a mystery slowly taking shape. She remembered vividly a haunting line Diana once wrote, a sentence that read like a prophecy for the future. One day she will know. When she is strong enough, she will understand why I could not speak. At first, Kate believed Diana was only lamenting her broken marriage or her private torments. But now, when she placed those words beside Charles's strange silence, they took on an entirely different weight. It was as though Diana had foreseen another woman walking the same path, and that this woman too would have to face the truth that had been hidden. The letters Diana had written to her closest confidant, often in trembling yet resolute handwriting, also hinted at a dangerous secret. In them, Diana complained of being watched, of having truths she could not entrust even to paper. She left scattered notes about how they will do everything to hide it, and the one who comes after me will bear the truth. At the time, most dismissed these as the anxious words of a woman trapped in the turmoil of her marriage to Charles and Camilla. But now, Kate could no longer see them as mere desperation. They became coded messages, cryptic warnings sent across time. Had Diana known of a secret so explosive it touched the royal bloodline itself, or perhaps even the king, and was every effort to control the image of the monarchy, every burden forced upon Kate as the future queen, nothing more than a strategy to ensure that truth never came to light? Kate began to feel she was stepping into a dangerous game of chess that Diana had once played but never finished. The more she revisited those words, the more she felt the chill of darkness tightening around her. She recalled Charles's evasive eyes, his vague remarks whenever Diana's name was mentioned, the abrupt changes of subject whenever conversation strayed toward the past. None of it seemed coincidental anymore. They looked, instead, like deliberate signs that a secret had been carefully buried. The tension between Kate and Charles grew more apparent. In the past, when he spoke of royal duty, Kate would listen quietly, determined to fulfill her role. But now, each time Charles uttered the words duty or image, she heard something else beneath them, as if he were not only speaking of public responsibility, but of the silence that had to be maintained at any cost. Kate felt trapped, not merely by the crown, but by a web of lies woven over decades. Suspicion gnawed at her heart. Whenever she thought of Diana, Kate sensed an invisible bond, as though they shared the same fate. Diana had warned of a truth too dangerous to be spoken, and now Kate wondered whether she had become the next figure in that tragic play. Diana's words, when reread in this new light, no longer seemed like private laments, but echoes from beyond the grave, evidence that she had glimpsed the truth and paid dearly for it. A shiver ran down Kate's spine as she considered the chilling possibility that the very secret Diana carried might have contributed to her untimely death. In moments of stillness, staring into the mirror, Kate realized she was no longer simply a wife, a mother, or a princess preparing for her role as queen. She was the heir to an unresolved legacy, the missing piece in a power struggle Diana had left behind. And one painful question echoed relentlessly in her mind. Was Charles the one behind the concealment of this truth? Kate's visit to Althorp was presented publicly as a short retreat to find peace after the strains of royal duties. The media painted the image of a serene duchess seeking calm, a devoted mother momentarily stepping away from London to restore her strength. Yet behind that facade, Kate carried another mission. She was haunted by Diana's words, her bleak letters, and the scattered fragments of a puzzle left incomplete. And Kate believed that only at Althorp, the place forever tied to Diana's memory, could she uncover the answers she desperately sought. Althorp, with its timeless grandeur and corridors steeped in history, carried an atmosphere that was both majestic and haunting. As Kate passed through the heavy iron gates, her heartbeat quickened. This was not just a casual visit. It was a journey deeper into the secret world Diana had left behind. The silence that hung in the air made every footstep echo, as though even the walls themselves were listening. Guided by an elderly butler long loyal to the Spencer family, Kate was led to an area rarely open to the public. There, hidden behind a cleverly disguised wooden panel, she discovered a storage room. It was not large, but it was filled with boxes of old documents, dusty yet carefully arranged. On one of the boxes, Kate froze as her eyes caught the familiar handwriting. For Catherine, when the time comes. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. With trembling hands, Kate reached out to touch the inscription, feeling as though Diana herself was whispering from the past, sending a message directly to her. This was no coincidence. Diana had foreseen that one day Kate would need the truth, and she had prepared for it. Inside the box, Kate found letters tied with a faded blue ribbon, hastily taken photographs of Diana with a strained expression, and most striking of all, a thick envelope marked DNA. When she opened it, her heart clenched at the sight of medical reports. Among them was an image of a man whose resemblance to Harry was chilling. The accompanying notes suggested this was no mere coincidence, but perhaps a clue to a hidden connection Diana had once uncovered. Kate carefully turned each page, her spine tingling with every line. In one note, Diana had written, "There are things I cannot make public, but the truth will find its way to someone brave enough. Catherine, I believe that person is you." Those words now resounded as a charge, a burden far greater than any royal duty Kate had ever carried. Her emotions were a storm, shock, grief, but also an overwhelming sense of kinship with Diana. The late princess had not only left her a personal archive, but a legacy of truth. Kate realized Diana had not scattered her diary entries and letters at random. They were deliberate, a trail meant for someone to follow, someone who could break the silence imposed by the palace. Yet this truth was not merely personal. If revealed, it could shake the very foundations of the monarchy's image and legitimacy. Clutching the DNA envelope, Kate's pulse raced as the weight of it sank in. She was now at the center of a conspiracy greater than anything she had ever imagined. The room was silent, broken only by Kate's uneven breaths. The dim light fell across the rows of boxes, making them look like coffins filled with secrets, waiting to be opened. From that moment on, she knew she could no longer return to being the dutiful duchess who smiled and fulfilled her role. Diana had chosen her, and that choice meant facing a truth that could change everything. Kate returned to Kensington Palace with a heavy heart, but now she carried more than suspicion. She carried undeniable evidence, the letters, the photographs, and above all, the DNA envelope Diana had left behind. She knew she could no longer remain silent. The one person who had to confront this truth was King Charles, the man who had always stood at the center of every tragedy in Diana's life. The conversation unfolded inside a closed room at Clarence's house. Charles sat in his familiar velvet chair, his face flickering with the unease as Kate entered, carrying a folder. Without hesitation, she placed the envelope firmly on the table, her eyes cold and unyielding. "Can you explain this?" Kate asked, her voice calm, yet laced with a restrained fury. Charles frowned slightly, his gaze darting across the documents before him, only to quickly avert. "These are nothing but old theories, unfounded rumors that Diana once obsessed over. None of it is true." But Kate was not so easily swayed. She pulled out photographs, handwritten notes from Diana, tangible proof that the man did indeed exist. Her voice cracked with emotion, but her words were resolute. "Diana knew, and she left it all to me. How long do you intend to deny it?" The air grew heavy. Charles let out a labored sigh, his trembling hands gripping the armrests of his chair. At last, as though every ounce of strength to conceal the truth had drained from him, he confessed, yes, there was someone, and yes, an agreement was made to ensure it would never come to light. But it was all to protect the crown, to keep the monarchy from collapse. The admission struck Kate like a knife to the heart. She looked directly at Charles, her anger and disillusionment surging. "Protect the crown? And what about Diana? She endured isolation, pain, and lies. You let her carry it all, while the truth was buried for the sake of power." Charles remained silent, his head bowed, eyes averted, an unspoken concession that every word Kate said was true. In that moment, the image of a steadfast monarch crumbled, revealing instead a man who had chosen silence in exchange for the survival of an institution. Kate felt as if the world around her was collapsing. Her devotion to the monarchy had always been about preserving a legacy, a symbol of fairness and honor. But now, all that remained was betrayal. Diana had died in loneliness, while Charles clung to silence, complicit in a secret that, if revealed, could alter the nation's perception of the Windsor family forever. The room grew suffocating. Kate rose, gathering the documents, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. You may call it duty. I call it betrayal. Not just to Diana, but to everyone who believed in the truth. Charles softly called her name, as if to explain further, but Kate was already walking away. The echo of her heels down the long corridor beat like a solemn drum, heralding the storm that was about to break. And as the door closed behind her, one haunting question lingered in Kate's mind. Could she ever forgive Charles's silence? Or was this the beginning of an inevitable confrontation? Kate returned to Kensington with reddened eyes, knowing she could not bear this burden alone. The only person she trusted to share the truth with was Prince William. That night, in the absolute security of their private room, Kate laid the DNA envelope and Diana's documents on the table. William, accustomed to his wife's composure, was shaken by the tragic expression on her face. "You need to see this," Kate said, her voice trembling as she slid the envelope toward him. William opened it. Each cold line of the DNA report tore at his heart. The normally composed prince turned pale, his hands trembling. In an instant, his world collapsed. He was no longer just the heir to the throne, but once again the boy who had lost his mother in a tragedy that had never truly ended. And now, the evidence revealed that the truth was even darker than he had ever imagined. Memories of Diana came flooding back, like fragments of a shattered puzzle falling into place. He remembered the nights she cried quietly in her Kensington room, the whispered words that there were things he was too young to understand, the pained looks that were never explained. Back then, he had been too little to grasp it, but now everything formed a harrowing picture. Diana had lived in fear, trapped by secrets his father and the palace had fought desperately to bury. William gripped the paper tightly, his chest aching. Then a thought struck him like a bolt of lightning, stealing his breath. What if this truth involved Harry? The words in the report, Diana's notes, and the image of a man whose face bore an uncanny resemblance to his brother. It all overwhelmed him. He wondered, had his family's history, Harry's very legitimacy, been hidden under a fog of lies all along? Kate watched her husband, her eyes brimming with worry. She knew this moment was changing him forever. William, raised to give absolute loyalty to the crown, now stood before a brutal choice: protect the monarchy by keeping the secret, or expose it in pursuit of justice for his mother. He moved toward the window, staring out at the quiet Kensington gardens. The roses Diana had once loved swayed gently in the night breeze. A searing pain rose in his chest. How could he turn his back on his mother, when her silent cries now echoed through every page of those documents? Yet he also knew that if this truth surfaced, the monarchy could be plunged into an unprecedented crisis. William shut his eyes tightly, a tear slipping down his face. Never had he felt such torment. Within him burned two opposing fires. One, the duty to uphold the crown he had been groomed to serve since childhood. The other, saying, the fierce longing to restore justice to the mother he had lost. The room fell silent, broken only by William's heavy breaths. Kate stepped forward, placed her hand gently on his shoulder, and whispered, "You don't have to bear this alone. I'll face it with you." But in William's eyes, the pain was still unmistakable. He knew this choice could shape the destiny of the entire Windsor family, or bring it all crashing down. A haunting question burned within him, unanswered. Would William conceal the truth to protect the crown, or dare to confront it, to reveal everything and deliver justice for his mother? Princess Diana. As he wrestled with his inner turmoil, a familiar figure appeared in the corridor of Kensington. Camilla. Her eyes were icy, her smile tight yet razor-sharp, as though she had already pierced through every secret. Without preamble, she stepped straight into the room, her voice low, deliberate, calculating. "You think you were the first to stumble upon this secret?" Camilla gave a faint laugh, resting her hand on the folder still lying open on the table. "I've known for years, and I've also known how to turn it into an advantage to secure my place." Kate froze. In that instant, she realized Diana had not only been betrayed by the monarchy, but that Camilla herself might have twisted her suffering into a weapon. Kate's voice shook, but it was the tremor of fury. "You knew, and you stayed silent? While William's mother endured loneliness and despair, you used it to climb to the throne?" Camilla didn't flinch. If anything, her gaze hardened with defiance. "If you dare expose this, remember, it won't just be the monarchy that falls. Your family, your reputation, everything you've built will be destroyed along with it. Do you really want to take that gamble, Catherine?" The air thickened, as though an invisible rope were tightening around the room. Yet Kate, instead of retreating, drew herself tall, her eyes burning with resolve. It was silence that killed Diana. It was compromise that left her to die alone. "I will not allow history to repeat itself." Her words struck Camilla like a blow. For a moment, even she faltered. The atmosphere was taut as a drawn bowstring, a confrontation without weapons, but no less perilous. On one side, Camilla, who had wielded secrets as instruments of power. On the other, Kate, determined to shatter the silence and restore justice for Diana. And in the fire of Kate's gaze, a silent declaration of war rang out. The truth would no longer remain in chains. At that very moment, as every eye turned toward an unprecedented press conference, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, did what no royal before her had ever dared. She shattered decades of silence, ignoring threats and breaking free of protocol. Kate's voice cut through the room, every word like a blade tearing through the veil of deception woven since Diana's time. And then the moment arrived. A man stepped out of the shadows, his features heartbreakingly familiar. The hair, the eyes, even the faintly wistful smile. Every trace echoed Diana. He needed no grand speech. A single, simple admission was enough to shake the world. He was the hidden son of Princess Diana. The hall erupted. The man thanked Kate, calling her the only one brave enough to return Diana the voice she was denied. Yet almost instantly, he made it clear this was not the end. His presence marked only the beginning of a quest for truth and justice. Inside the monarchy, reactions split starkly. Prince William stood frozen, his eyes torn between love for his mother, loyalty to the throne, and duty to his country. Harry erupted with emotion, siding with the stranger as though he had found the missing piece of his own grief and isolation. Charles remained silent, his face set like stone, but that silence provoked more suspicion than any denial could. And Camilla? Her cold, unflinching stare revealed no shock, almost as if she had been expecting this moment all along. Outside, the public fractured into two camps. Some hailed the man's appearance as a beacon of justice, a symbol that the truth could no longer be buried. Others saw him as a dangerous threat, capable of shaking the fragile foundations of the monarchy itself. The clash of support and outrage ignited a storm of controversy unlike anything the modern royal family had ever faced. And yet, one question loomed, suspended in the air, unanswered. What will become of Diana's hidden son? Stay with us. This story is far from over.